Today, I'm speaking about the atomic alien theory, and it's kind of a complicated theory. It certainly deals with something I'm sure many of you probably haven't thought of with regard to the extraterrestrial question and how it began and who was involved and how we were, I think, accidentally, if not intentionally, summoning extraterrestrials. And we've been doing it for some time, even probably the 1920s, 1930s. I only go back to about 1945, maybe 1943, when we start talking about exactly what goes on with this. Arthur C. Clarke, who's one of my favorite science fiction authors, he once, in one of his talks, and when he spoke with a lot of people, he said that, we have to think about what is out there, and we need to understand that any advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. What if we were to turn this around and say something like, well, what if magic is responsible for the creation of advanced technology? Meaning that magic was the bottom line. Magic was the science that started things. And now, a lot of what we talk about with quantum mechanics, some people call magic, because at first they could not fathom how certain things happen. It's always this idea that, well, that's all pseudoscience, and we don't have any proof of it. We can't duplicate it in a lab. Well, magic you can't duplicate in a lab. And when I use magic, it's kind of like a term that means a whole lot. It's like a loaded axiom. Because when you think of magic, you think pulling rabbits out of a hat and all that. No, this is really focused magic, okay? Focused like in the old days. I mean, those who are familiar with magic or alchemy know about chaos, they know about synergy, the idea of breaking something apart and then putting it back together again. Or how about the creation and destruction of primordial matter? This was all the goal of those who wanted to harness the energy of the sun. They wanted to have the ultimate power. And that was the goal back in the 1920s, 1930s, and into the 40s. It's been proposed many times that when the atomic bomb was detonated at the Trinity site in White Sands, New Mexico, it accomplished many things. Not only did it send a message to our enemies that we have the ultimate weapon, but perhaps to the magicians who hid behind the science that it was a working, meaning a spell, meaning a ritual. It was a ritual to actually channel the power of this atomic bomb out into the universe to call out and animate something called the homunculus. Now, there are a lot of people that don't know what a homunculus is, so I'm going to explain it as best I can. It is a creature that is artificially made by a magician or an alchemist. They call him the little man. It's Latin for the little man. Okay? And although science has made progress in and of the last century, there are numerous ethical issues that need to be addressed by the scientific community. One such issue is the creation of artificial life. For some, this is the logical progression of scientific knowledge, and for others, this is the realm that should not be interfered with by human beings. Concepts relating to the creation of artificial life, such as genetic engineering and human cloning, are relatively modern scientific ideas. Some people get into something called Frankenstein hysteria, where they're worried that we're going to create a monster. And sure, trial and error, we may create a monster, but always remember about the Frankenstein story. I've always contended that the Frankenstein story is not about man playing God. It's about man playing God and then not taking care of his creation. Meaning that the monster was not a monster when it first came to be. When Victor Frankenstein brought this being to life, he forgot that he should name his creation, which he did not. And he didn't like his creation, so then he abandoned it. The creation did not know who his father was, did not know what his name was, and he was just looking for one thing: love. He didn't get love. And so keep that in mind with our creations we're making now and the innovations we have. We can have artificial intelligence, we can have clones, we can have babies designed and put into incubators outside the mother's womb. But if we treat them like they are just nothing. Lab rats and lamb animals will have Frankenstein's monsters walking around among us, and we don't want that. In the past, in the field of alchemy, medieval scientists or magicians sought to artificially create life, and one of the beings that alchemists purportedly were able to create was the homunculus, a little man. The purpose of the homunculus was to be a servant of man, and over time, scientists and magicians have wanted to bring into the world a perfect servant, whether it be natural, supernatural, or unnatural. Now, to the Kabbalists, or the Kabbalists, the homunculus was called the golem. Golem was man made of clay. Frankenstein means man made of stone. Frankenstein, stone, Frankenstein. So we've always had these metaphors and fables and stories and mythologies about mankind making its own servants, servitors and egregores and tulpas and thoughts being made into realities. Okay? And so when you're looking at the creation process through magic, a lot of what the alchemists would do is they would have this little bottle, and then they would put together the building blocks of life, and then they would kind of shake it up, do a few invocations, and then voila, they'd have their little man. Now, it sounds outrageous, but we have people like John Dee and Ed Kelly, we have Aleister Crowley, we have Jack Parsons, we have all these well-known magicians that were doing just that. They wanted to bring in a changeling, a moonchild. They called him a number of things, okay? Alchemists compare the homunculus, or golem, to the original man of creation. And according to some, the theorists that are out there, biblical theorists, they believe that Adam was one of those beings that was created from mud. Some even believe that Adam was created from another planet. Now, these are some amazing carvings. They're amazing images that are ancient images. What you're seeing here is we're seeing the creation process. Adam and Eve, or man and woman. We have snakes for the knowledge. We have what is known as the container, or the egg. It's the magical egg where both were created. And then, if you look to the, I guess it would be the left of the screen there, you see what looks like a spaceship. And then you have them roaming the earth, and so you have this image of how creation began. They were created in a container, an egg. They were brought to earth through some sort of spaceship means or some sort of contraption or machine, and then they were formed and walked. Now, if you look at the Hebrew name of Adam, or it's Adam, and then Adam and Adama, that means man of red clay, or red earth, or ruddy-faced, meaning he was of red skin or red dirt. So there are a lot of those who think of the ancient alien theory that man was created on Mars, and that after a great war, an explosion, pieces of Mars and pieces of other planets formed off. And then when we talk about the fall of man in biblical parlance, we have the fall of man literally coming from Mars to planet Earth. And that's part of it's just one way of thinking. It's not the only way of thinking. So if you think I believe this, I'm not sure, but I've read this in many accounts. And there have been authors who have written that the entire creation was the aftermath of an exodus from Mars or some other planet, that the way the earth was seeded through panspermia, and then through a bombardment of all kinds of building blocks. Comets, meteors, all carry these building blocks for life. These celestial bodies were actually launched from this unknown planet, or from Mars to planet Earth. So really, we are the aliens. We are the extraterrestrials that came here. And what's interesting about that theory is that when you think about it, there's a lot of reasons to think that we don't belong to this planet. Gravity is not our friend. We get older. Look at my knee. We get older, knees give out, we get sunburn, we have all these problems trying to adapt to the environment of this planet. Now, we can say it's all cosmic radiation, and we're doing pretty well surviving, but in a way, we're extremophiles. A lot of what the planet is giving us is toxic and extreme, yet we still survive. Now, how is that? Because we learned to adapt. Okay? It's called adaptive mutation. Rather than evolution, We adapted through time. I mean, there's a lot of scientists talking about adaptive mutation now rather than evolution, because we're proving now that rather than going from one to the other to the other to the other, we had help. They're not sure just what kind of help we got. You've heard about ghost species. You can look them up on the internet. They always talk about the ghost species. What is the ghost species? And you can look at all the ancient writings, and you can see that we've had help, but who helped? Okay? Getting into a little ancient alien lore. So according to alchemists, they were literally capsules or bottles or basically encapsulated type of, I guess you could call them rocks, or they traveled with some substrate around them or what have you as they were going towards the earth. And so the alchemists decided they wanted to do the same thing, and it created something called the magical egg. And if you look on the left of the screen, you notice that the magical egg is kind of a bottle, and in it is a little man with a big bald head, and he's all crouched. And then we have pictures of other alchemists, like Ptolemy and others, who were able to create artificially made men, artificially made what they called the secret chiefs, and they were able to use them to get knowledge, and so kind of like in the same way they tried to create. And one of the basic tools for creating man or creating an action was to have an immense explosion or an immense jolt. Now in Frankenstein's monster, they used the electricity. Lightning wakes up the body. Light, okay? In alchemy, they use explosions, like little tiny, they put together like magnesium and all these particles, and boom, coming into presence, the big explosions. That's why presto changeo, that's been part of the mythology about magicians, but there was a lot of thought to that, because it was let there be light, let there have light. We are light beings. We are light beings that are filling our own capsules, our own ways of carrying a soul, okay? And what's happening now is scientists, where they used to laugh at the idea of consciousness and souls, they're not laughing anymore. They're looking into something called panpsychism. And what panpsychism is where they think that everything, the chair, the table, the walls, they all have consciousness. That everything material has consciousness of some kind. Now, at first, panpsychism was laughed at, but in the many stories of creation, we hear that consciousness is light. We hear that there was an unbelievable explosion or whatever. I remember the Pope once said, he said, God is not a magician, but he used natural means in order to create the planet, create the universe. And so big bangs and explosions and let there be light and sunlight and all that was a part of the process. Okay? Part of the process. And alchemists believe that the force of light, the force of something to open the portals, is what creates light, what brings it to us, why we called attention to ourselves with that kind of light. Whether you believe in creationism and intelligent design or evolution, humanity's inception is the ultimate perennial question. If you dig deep enough, you may even wonder if humans are native to this planet, as I said earlier. Dig even deeper, and you may wonder if humans are a product of an alien progenitor race. This raises the question of our origins and whether or not we truly are a result of synthetic biology of some kind. That our origins began in space, and that millions of years ago, our original ancestors came here either by space capsule or panspermia, where microorganisms or chemical precursors of life, things from outer space, came to Earth via space dust, meteoroids, asteroids, and comets. Carl Sagan once said, we are all made of space stuff. Carl Sagan said that we are all somehow we're somehow curious about what's above. We pray to a God that's up above rather than below. Now, why is that? Because we say it's where home is. Why do we believe, down to our cell structures, down to our core intelligence, we believe we come from the heavens? Because that's where we were made. That's where we were first conceived. And we came here and we grew into the people we are today because that was part of this plan. It was a saving plan to get us here. And there are many ways to call upon these beings. And according to ancient Jewish tradition or creationist myth, the Elohim, a plural noun for gods or deities, created primordial matter which comes in four forms: fire, wind, water, and earth. Therefore, there are four states of matter below the sky. one above the next, each one encompassing one below, all sides, like a sphere. Everything is either a sphere or a wormhole or a vortex. Everything we do is about spinning around. It's like a mix. Black holes spin around. Tornadoes spin around. Rosen bridges that Einstein talked about. It's all about the spin. Elijah's vehicle was a vortex. He took Elijah into the sky, if you believe in the Bible. Took him into the sky. There's always that light, that pillar of light, that pillar of wind. It's always there. The centrifugal forces. We were made in that torsion field. Okay? There is no empty void without matter between these forms. Meaning that we may think that out there in space is an empty void, but there's plenty of matter out there, like dark matter and other matter, that's filling in the gaps. There's nothing not full. The four forms of matter, fire, wind, water, and earth, are the basic elements of all terrestrial creations. Everything that exists, including man, mammals, birds, reptiles, fish, plants, metal, precious gems, pearls, rocks, mountains, dirt, etc., all exist with this matter. And all, they're saying now, have consciousness. All these things are a combination of four basic elements, according to everything that can be found under the sky, except for these four things, are a combination of matter and spiritual properties. The matter is a combination of these four basic elements, and these basic elements are made up of primordial matter and spiritual properties. Keep that in mind. We're all primordial matter. We all have spiritual properties. Panpsychism is the new science. You'll be hearing more about it in the future, because scientists are now considering this. There's a consciousness behind everything. There's a purpose behind everything. It took 2 billion years for simple, single-celled life to spawn our primordial lineage. 2 billion years after that, mankind developed a curiosity about who created us. We're now in that period right now. Even scientists are wondering who created us. Now, during a time of great war, there were many occult practitioners that wanted to summon the primordial creators. They all were in agreement that there had to be various elements and ritual involved in order to accomplish this. And on many occasions, there were master magicians conducting channeling, conjuring, and contacting what were called the secret chiefs. John Dee and Ed Kelly used to sing keys called the Enochian keys to open up the stairway to heaven. They were some of my favorite magicians to read about in the medieval days, and they conjured these, or they brought them forward for espionage. They used spiritual espionage to bring down enemies for the queen. Then we had Aleister Crowley, we had several others that came along, and they too were doing their own rituals. Early in the 20th century, Aleister Crowley wrote a novel that deals with the production of a kind of homunculus he terms the Moonchild. Is the name under which the novel was eventually published. Crowley wrote of a magic rite to induce a particular type of spirit to incarnate in the embryo that he created, where a woman would then carry until birth. Crowley himself had contact with many of these beings. One in particular is called Lamb, L-A-M. He called him the Way. And a rendering of Lamb shows that this being was bald, small, and gray. In Vienna, there were special meetings and seances conducted by the Vril and with the Thule societies in which communications were made with the same beings. It's alleged that these beings were part of establishing the mystical side of Nazism and revealing to them information about powerful ancient weapons, weapons that would give them military advantage over the Allies. Some believe the earliest designs for flying saucers and the mysterious engines were given during contact with these beings, even atomic energy. By 1941, the successful Vril 2 levitation craft was employed for transatlantic reconnaissance flights. This craft employed the Schumann levitator drive for vertical lift, and when activated, the craft displayed effects commonly described in many UFO accounts. Blurring of vehicle contours and luminous ionization colors relative to the craft's engine acceleration. Also, there were varying colors from orange to green, blue to white, as well as the craft made radical 90-degree turns characteristic of UFOs. Now, they got this information from what? Channeling. They got this information from where? Who knows? They claim they got them from beings. They call them the secret chiefs. And this is where they got their information, apparently. Now, there's a body of thought, but one of the most important rituals was to send a signal to the beings in space, or these homunculi, or these dimensional beings, ultra-terrestrials. And what it would be is a light produced by the most powerful force on Earth, the atomic bomb. At the Trinity site, the scientists ordered that a 100-ton bottle named Jumbo it was supposed to be brought at great expense in order to enclose the atomic bomb. However, it never was used for that purpose. It was placed a short distance from the explosion. The test blast at Trinity destroyed the tower, but Jumbo survived intact and can be seen today at the site. There's a conspiracy theory about the nuclear bottle that survived the atomic blast, and that is, it speculates that Jack Parsons brought forward a moonchild, but they wanted more power, and they wanted to use the same magical egg, Jumbo, put it near a huge explosion, see if they could activate or call out the moonchild, bring it forward. According to conspiracy researcher Michael Hoffman, it was believed that a changeling was placed inside the huge bottle to attract extraterrestrial entities. This was an alchemical ritual called the destruction of primordial matter. It was an attempt to animate the homunculus. This, according to Hoffman, sent a signal into space that we wanted to contact with other homunculi, or the little men that were created by superior extraterrestrial intelligence. In other words, scientists believe that a superior intelligence created their own golem, and that they were the alien beings that we know about today. In some UFO discussions, there's always been the theory that perhaps the detonation of the nuclear bomb was a ritual, and that it was used not only for war, but to signal the sylphs, the homunculi, the secret chiefs. They wanted them to come to Earth, or they wanted them to come through dimensions to visit. And they wanted to get information from them, including the exchange of technological advancements and perhaps share the secret of artificial intelligence. The bomb was detonated on the 33rd North Parallel on 7/16/1945. When you add the numbers of the dates separately, it adds up to 33. The bomb was later used on Hiroshima and Nagasaki on the 33rd North Parallel as well. If you look at Nagasaki and Hiroshima, they're on the 33rd degree parallel. Trinity is on the 33rd degree parallel. President Kennedy was shot on the 33rd degree parallel. Bobby Kennedy was shot on the 33rd degree parallel. Roswell is on the 33rd degree parallel. Does it all make sense to you? Ritual lines where the power is greater. The 33rd President, Harry Truman, announced the news that the bomb had been detonated from the cruiser USS Augusta in the mid-Atlantic, saying that the device was more than 2,000 times more powerful than the largest bombs used at that time. Dr. Robert Oppenheimer, the architect of the modern atomic bomb who was in charge of the Manhattan Project, was asked by a student after the Manhattan explosion, "How do you feel having exploded the first atomic bomb on Earth?" Oppenheimer's reply for the question was, "Not the first atomic bomb, but the first atomic bomb in modern times." See, he strongly believed that nukes were used in ancient India. What made Oppenheimer believe that a nuclear weapon was this accurate description of the weapons used in the Mahabharata, in the war then, the epic modern of nuclear weapons? Well, he was referring to something called the Brahmastra, which is a weapon written about in ancient Sanskrit. According to ancient Sanskrit writings, the Brahmastra was a very powerful weapon that was created by what were called gods from the fortresses of the air. Now, if you look up gods from the fortresses of the air, do you know where those gods reside? Mars. The fortresses of the air are from Mars. Now, this bomb, or whatever it was, this Brahmastra, had to be detonated in a certain area after a key phrase or invocation was given by the user of the weapon. So they had to pray. They had to do incantations. They had to do magic to bring this bomb forward. So in this invocation, the user would call upon the weapon and use it through a medium against its adversary. Now, India is considered one of the oldest civilizations. In fact, much of the ancient history allegedly can be called antediluvian, meaning before the flood. And they're also anti-Adamic, or before Adam civilizations as well that are talked about. In fact, the Torah speaks of 974 generations existing before the creation of Adam by God, and these are the peoples that the children of Adam and Eve married. According to the scripture, Adam and Eve had 3 children, Cain, Abel, and Seth, who married and had children, and biblical scholars have questioned who did they marry and what families existed simultaneously in the creation story. You can look back and read some of the stories from Sanskrit, some of the stories that were given through the Torah. 974 generations that existed prior to the Torah may have populated India, and there have been texts that not only talk about their remarkable history, but the ancient scrolls also have revealed a connection with the gods. And they describe them as powerful. They used ancient technologies in order to fly through the heavens. And it also is interesting to note that these technologies also included very powerful weapons that were capable of causing the entire sky to burn up, also scorch the earth. In some accounts, they were even able to lift elephants off the ground with air and fire. These accounts allegedly date back some 11,000 years. Ancient Sanskrit texts dating back 6,000 BC. They describe in detail technologies and flying chariots of the gods called Vimanas. Many modern ancient alien enthusiasts believe that the Vimanas are basically ancient spaceships or flying machines that, by all accounts, frightened elephants, push warm air from the underside, and many of these accounts come from a document known as the Vimanika Shastra, where there seems to be a diagram of power sources, and then they have the schematics of all kinds of vortex engines and gyroscope technologies. Notice how that looks like a modern UFO. After the atomic bomb detonation in New Mexico and later in Japan, something bizarre started happening. There was a wave of unidentified flying objects reported by the public. The first wave of UFO sightings began in the Pacific Northwest. The first case was known as the Maury Island Affair in Puget Sound, Washington. You don't hear much about the Maury Island Affair, but it was one of the first sightings that happened during the 1940s. In the summer of 1947, a man named Harold Dahl was out on his boat with his son Christopher, their dog, 2 workers. Harold collected logs floating in the Sound and resold them to lumber mills. According to Dahl, on June 21st at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, 6 unidentified flying objects appeared in the sky above his boat. One of the saucers then exploded and a metal substance started raining down from the sky. Then came another report filed by Kenneth Arnold. While flying in his plane, he saw 9 flying boomerangs, that he saw them over Mount Rainier. And though Arnold said that he initially thought that he had seen these test flight military aircraft, the military later said that they had been conducting no tests. And that was during the time of the incident. A prospector at Mount Adams saw the objects around the same time as Arnold, bolstering the story. When asked by the press what he was seeing, Arnold replied that it was like watching saucers skip across the water. The media then said, "Oh, flying saucers." Okay, and then it stuck. Significantly, in 1947, there was a report of what has now been called a crash saucer at Roswell, New Mexico. Not only is Roswell near the first nuclear test site at Trinity, but it sits on the 33rd parallel. This is where we begin speaking of the atomic alien theory and whether or not the atomic tests were crucial in opening up the world that both aliens and synthetic intelligence could occupy. Think about it. Where did the saucer crash? Roswell. Where did it crash near? The 509th Bombing Group. What did they do at the 509th? They loaded the Enola Gay with the atomic bomb. Is that a coincidence? Signal was sent. They went where the signal was supposed to be. They detected it. Something happened. They crashed. When Oppenheimer's bomb was set off in New Mexico, Enrico Fermi offered wagers on whether or not the bomb would ignite the atmosphere and cause a chain reaction, and if so, whether it would merely destroy New Mexico or destroy the world, or even send a huge wave into space, creating turbulence and maybe take out other planets. They were worried that a whirlwind would rise up, go into the atmosphere, into space, and destroy everything around us. But they did it anyway. It was Fermi that suggested that there are billions of stars in the galaxy that are similar to the sun, and many of these stars are billions of years older than the solar system. With a high probability, some of these stars have Earth-like planets, and if the Earth is typical, some may have developed intelligent life forms. Fermi theorized that an explosion of great magnitude would signal the possible alien races, and that they could very well visit the planet to at least make note of the area where the bomb was first detonated. Once again, this thesis was first presented before the UFO wave of 1947. So he already knew. He said, well, if something that big explodes, we're going to send a signal to something out there, and they're going to come down and they're going to go, what's going on? The magicians knew it too. That's why they did it. It wasn't just because they wanted to win the war. They wanted to see if they could open up a portal. They wanted to know if they could contact the secret chiefs of this huge explosion they had. Although many scientists would like to claim that the Fermi story is a myth, there was a definite concern that a thermonuclear reaction might trigger the fusion of nitrogen nuclei in the atmosphere, causing a cascade effect, enough to draw attention to anything observing us from a distance. The circle was becoming complete. What was once called magic was slowly becoming science. From channeling and ritual came the scientific attempt at opening a gateway where many extraterrestrials were entering in. Rocket scientist Jack Parsons had once said that the bottle of Trinity housed a golem. He claimed that it contained a rudimentary life form placed in a sealed container with a variety of ingredients that the scientists who were Kabbalists wanted to animate the primordial matter by alchemical means. The ritual would signal a new age of creation and bring the world closer to creating artificial life. It sounds so unbelievable, and I know there seems to be some method of all this alien alchemical madness. Parsons was later killed attempting a smaller version of the experiment at Trinity. Parsons received a rush order of explosives for a film set, and he began to work on his home laboratory with this fusion device. An explosion destroyed the lower part of his building, during which Parsons basically sustained mortal wounds. What's interesting about Jack Parsons and about him, he basically started JPL. He was a brilliant rocket scientist, and so he's been honored with a crater on the moon named after him. Parsons has this impact crater on the battered far side of the moon. So the question I have is, who in the world, or even in the solar system, would be capable of appreciating this kind of memorial? Why would they give a memorial on the far side of the moon? Who would appreciate that? I think we know. Would an explosion of an atomic bomb be enough to signal the aliens? Was Fermi correct in his theories? Was Jack Parsons trying to do an experiment on a smaller scale to bring in these beings through an explosive, unstable wormhole? And did it kill him? An article in Scientific American published recently, it's a study by a space and atmospheric physicist at the University of Reading in the United Kingdom, found that the concussion waves from bombs that were detonated in World War II were felt at the edge of space. Now we're talking about the smaller bombs, not the atomic bomb, okay? The smaller bombs were felt at the edge of space. Christopher Scott claims that air raids over London in World War II released energy of at least 300 lightning strikes. Scott said, and historical accounts from the ground attest, to the far-reaching power of bombs like the 22,000-pound British Grand Slam. When the researchers looked at the ionospheric response, records around time about 152 large Allied air raids in Europe, they found that the electron concentration significantly decreased to the shock waves from the bombs. These bombs were affecting the magnetic field. They were opening holes in the magnetic field. Now, can you imagine what that was like back then, to have that happen and what was entering in? When the research looked at the ionospheric response records around the time 152 large Allied air raids in Europe, they found that the electron concentration significantly decreased due to the shock waves from the bombs. They were opening up holes. Now, you imagine what the atomic bomb did. It was opening an even bigger one. And something may have got in. The effects of the shock waves will be temporary, Scott said, lasting under a day. The ionosphere is largely controlled by solar radiation, he told Life Science. The bombing represents a small impact by comparison. Scott added that the ionosphere weakening may have affected the efficiency of shortwave radio communications, which relied on the ionosphere to reflect the signals over long distances. I'm sure it affected other things too. So perhaps Enrico Fermi was onto something when he thought the atomic bomb would send a signal into space. If those bombs were felt at the edge of space and they were smaller, imagine what an atomic bomb would do. It'd send a signal. He knew it. Fermi knew it. It is obvious that the contemporary UFO alien era began just after the testing of nuclear capabilities, and thereafter people were reporting little bald homunculi, like entities coming down from space, to butcher cattle and abduct humans from their homes. It is also noteworthy to point out that Colonel Philip J. Corso had claimed in the book The Day After Roswell that much of our modern technology came from the retrieval of flying saucer that crashed at Roswell. Just like the Vril said when they got the information for the Nazis, everything was technological, everything was weapon, everything was for the betterment of the war against the Allies. We now had possession of that technology. We now had possession of all the information. How did we get it? Was it through just random acts, or was it that we were signaling these beings to come down and give us what we wanted? Recently, there's been speculation over whether or not the events that happened at Roswell were purposely carried out by alien beings in order to begin something called the post-biological era, or the era of artificial intelligence. Now remember, Roswell happened in 1947, and after that, look at where we are now. Brought on all kinds of strangeness, brought on all kinds of changes. Culture changed, everything changed. Something changed when that came through. There have been many UFO theorists that have observed that perhaps the little bald grays with the big eyes are simply synthetic intelligence. That argument assumes that there are highly intelligent extraterrestrials out there that built the first artificially intelligent homunculi. It is proposed that the scientists use little magic to bring them into this world, and this would mean that the gray aliens are hyper-intelligent, pan-dimensional beings. Not extraterrestrials at all, but pan-dimensional beings were brought here through magic, through bending of the time, the warps and the dimensions. They were warping dimensions with the atomic bomb to bring these through. I have this double think that I'm dealing with. Are they extraterrestrials? Or are they hyperdimensional? Are they pan-dimensional? Are they ultra-terrestrials? We still don't know. But it seems a little odd that all these things took place just prior to the modern UFO era. Susan Schneider of the University of Connecticut and the Institute for Advanced Studies at Princeton theorizes that the aliens that we claim are visiting this planet may be artificial intelligence that's billions of years old. Schneider said in a Daily Galaxy report, all lines of evidence converge on the conclusion that the maximum age of extraterrestrial intelligence would be billions of years, specifically ranges from 1.7 billion years to 8 billion years. So your aliens, your homunculi, are synthetic intelligence that are nearly 8 billion years old. They've been around before creation. Somebody created them. Something created them to basically patrol the galaxies, look around, find wormholes, enter in, come out. So it's synthetic intelligence basically being summoned here by magic. Now, while scores of philosophers, scientists, and futurists have prophesied the rise of artificial intelligence and of the impending singularity, most have restricted their predictions to just planet Earth. Few thinkers outside the realm of science fiction have considered the notion that artificial intelligence is already out there and has been there for eons. There are also scientists at NASA who have used synthetic biology to create alien organisms in a lab. Now the question is, where do they get the model for that alien organism? That's the question I have. They've created 8 different parts to this alien biology. Now what are they using it for? What are they comparing it to? What do they know? Why would they create alien biology, synthetic biology? Why would they do this? That's a question that's been on my mind since I first heard the story. The new synth biodiscovery suggests that there might be imagined forms of DNA-based life as we know it on Earth and beyond Earth, and they live in extreme conditions. There are also among us artificial life forms from space that have visited this planet and may have been responsible for the rash of abduction stories in the late 20th century. Why were they abducting people? They had an interest in our biology. They had an interest in our ecology. They had an interest in our consciousness, because they don't have it, because they're artificial intelligence. They're synthetic bots. The grays are synthetic bots. Okay? And they were brought here through science, through magic, whatever you want to call it. They were brought here through summoning. We summoned them by using our technology to do it. We blew things up to bring the aliens here. Get your attention, come down here, we need you. We need your interest in our technology. We need your interest to help us grow. And certainly we did, since the 1940s. Remarkably so, expediently so. The question is whether or not we signaled them into this world with the technology their creators supplied us in the past. And this would mean that we have yet to meet the creators of these synthetic bots, and it can be said that there are scientists and the world leaders that already have seen these, met these creators. So here's the deal. We used the technology they gave us to signal them to come back. And the way we got the information in the first place was to channel them from another dimension. But we wanted them physical to be here, so what we had to do is we had to blow things up, smash atoms, and do it. We did it, and look what happened. Now, we can always go into the idea of whether or not we made deals with these beings, whether or not we said, okay, you can come here, abduct people, do experiments on them, and then bring us the results. Every time you hear of any abduction scenario back in the 1970s and 80s, there was always the comment that we are here to do a better purpose. That's what we were used for. Many people, they were all for it because the aliens had conditioned them. And the major psyops saying that, well, this is what we're here for. We're here to better your planet, and if you don't be careful, we'll have an ecological disaster. What are we hearing about now? Well, we're hearing about biological advancements and an ecological disaster. So the aliens were saying this to the people who were being abducted some 20, 30, 40 years ago. And now we're saying it now. Now, how does that happen? Well, they're preparing again for another arrival. And in order for them to prepare for another arrival and maybe even an occupation, they have to change the conditions on the planet. They have to cool it down, terraform it, change it, and that's what they're doing. They're preparing for an arrival. It's about sustainability. They need to make space for another civilization, an occupation force. That's why they're talking about sustainability. That's why they're talking about Agenda 21 and 2030. They have to procure enough land so they can allow these beings to live with us, because with the billions we have now, some have to go to make way for the aliens, to make way for the homunculi, to make way for these advanced beings that will rule us in a synarchy. And this is why we've created a powerful particle quark cannon at the Large Hadron Collider at CERN. What are we doing there? Well, we're bigger than atomic bombs there. We're smashing particles with the power of neutron stars. It's the power of a neutron star exploding under Geneva every time they slam that stuff together. More so the atomic bomb. The bomb with the edge of the universe. This goes beyond that. This opens up dimensions. This contacts these beings. CERN set out to find the God particle by smashing particles together, literally creating the Big Bang under Switzerland. Theoretically, they use more power, they may be able to open up a hole to the cosmos, literally forcing God through the wormhole. We want to meet God. We're going to blow things up to try. If you looked at all of any of the artistic interpretations of when a being from space or from heaven shows up, you always see them in like a circle or a wormhole. Jesus comes through in a wormhole. Elijah comes through in a wormhole. They use the pillars of Orion and snakes, and you see people going up in a wormhole. It's magic of the highest kind, with everything in place, the elements to basically open up a portal to bring these people through. And perhaps something else will get through. And maybe someday we'll meet extraterrestrial intelligence through dimensional tinkering. There's also the possibility that we could receive a message. We could possibly receive a message from the cosmos from different extraterrestrial dimensions. Now, theoretically, if a message should hitch a ride on a frequency, it could communicate with beings or ultra-terrestrials that may lurk in the outer dimensions. See what these are? At the CERN facility, there are special panels or tapestries that are like huge slides. On each slide, there are special messages in several languages. Each slide looks like it's made of stretched cloth with symbols, letters, and geometric shapes printed on them. Other symbols include Mandarin Chinese symbols, Arabic symbols, and other panels have Sanskrit characters. In India, the only people that read the Sanskrit were scholars of the Vedas, the Upanishad scriptures, and all were written in the language of the gods. Who are they trying to summon with these panels? I'm sure they put them in the hole, slam the particles together, open up a portal, and this is our little calling card of saying, hi, we're speaking in your language. We're speaking the ancient Aramaic, saying hi. They're all greetings. Okay? So not only is CERN a quark cannon, but it's also a way to open up portals to bring in these beings. Make sense? The same gods that they're trying to talk to are the ones that are responsible for the secrets of the Vimanas, those flying machines. Some gods that used ancient technologies in order to fly through the heavens, the same technologies that included very powerful weapons that were capable of causing the entire sky to burn up and scorch the earth. The original atomic explosions. They're talking to these beings that brought them the information for the original explosions that created the world, that created the universe, that created everything. So what are we trying to do? What are we trying to do? Now I have become death, the destroyer of worlds. And we should remember that Hindu scripture that Robert Oppenheimer spoke at the atomic test at Trinity. The line from the Hindu sacred next to the Bhagavad Gita has come to define Robert Oppenheimer, and its meaning is more complex than you may realize. Not only have you become death, the destroyer of worlds, you've created other opportunities to make new ones. Oppenheimer said, "We knew the world would not be the same. A few people laughed, a few people cried, most were silent." He said, "I remember the line from the Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita. Vishnu is trying to persuade the prince that he should do his duty, and to impress him, takes on his multiple armed form and says, 'Now I have become death, the destroyer of the worlds.' The multi-armed form of Vishnu is Shiva. Shiva is on the campus of CERN. What are they doing at CERN? They're trying to bring God through the wormhole, or at least their idea of what God is. It all comes together, doesn't it? It's a theory, mind you. And a theory is a theory, but it's certainly an interesting theory. When Arthur C. Clarke wrote 2001: A Space Odyssey, he introduced us to the monolith. Monoliths are machines built by an unseen extraterrestrial species, and in the series of novels and the films based on these, 3 monoliths are discovered in the solar system by humans. The response of the characters to the discovery drives the plot of the series. It also influences the fictional history of the series, particularly by encouraging humankind to progress with technological development and space travel. The first monolith appears at the beginning of the story, set in prehistoric times. It is discovered by a group of hominids that somehow triggers a considerable shift in evolution, starting with the ability to use tools and weaponry. The apes touch the alien slab to become more than just apes. They become more human and receive the intelligence necessary to create machines, to leave the earth and touch another monolith. Mankind is then catapulted benevolently through the wormhole to make another leap in evolution, to meet his creator and gain knowledge. You notice that the homunculus, or the baby, or the embryo, was also featured. In 2010, the year we make contact. The ape man reaches out to the alien technology, takes on a new meaning now, doesn't it? Many times throughout history, we have reached out to the heavens and have touched what we call the divine. We have seen the depiction of this throughout history. The Michelangelo painting where Adam reaches out for God's touch. What does he want from God? He wants knowledge. How does he get that information? He reaches out. He sends a signal. He prays. That was the early magic. Then, of course, we have the movie E.T., the extraterrestrial. You see the finger touching little Elliot. It's the same thing. He's reaching out for more information to find out where he comes from. What is he doing here? And of course, E.T., the extraterrestrial, is done by the same man who filmed Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Remember what I said at the beginning of this presentation. Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. But could any sufficiently advanced civilization be indistinguishable from God's? Think about it. If any advanced civilization had any of this power that I'm talking about, then they would be seen as gods. And many people understand that a lot of religions have come from these encounters. I mean, think about it. Back in the time of Ezekiel, Ezekiel wanted to go after the idolaters. So what happened to Ezekiel? He saw a wheel in the sky with beings that had faces of lions and eagles and bulls. We have the story of Noah, who had encounters with not only the Elohim, but he had encounters with the Nephilim, beings from wherever. He had to be warned of a flood that was coming, and he built an ark. Moses, when he saw the burning bush, it was a light that consumed itself. It was a light that he saw. He received information, brought on the Ten Commandments, the new law. Okay? There have been others, like Saul of Tarsus in the Bible. He saw a light, it blinded him, and he immediately became an evangelist for Rome. Started a religion, arguably started Christianity. The Christianity that most people believe today. And if you want to go one further, we've got Peter Nubrov. Saw a light in his bedroom, was told he had to go on a diet, was given a magical typewriter, typed something called the Owaspy, saying that beings have been watching this planet for 3,000 years, calling them angels, but they're really, of course, the same beings that we talked about earlier. Joseph Smith, a man, 14-year-old boy, goes into the woods, sees two lights in the sky, starts a religion called the Mormon Church. Been a very successful church for a long period of time. But then again, it was another story of coming in contact with something through magic, through prayer, through fasting, through all the things we have to do to be open for these contacts. So the question is, have these beings been progressively seeding ideas into Earth's advancing cultures? And how do they do it? How many times have we seen our world change because of brilliant people who've received information about something that is outrageous? I talked to Stephen Hawking once, and I asked him about aliens, and he told me, he said, anything's possible with Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. Aliens are possible, Santa Claus is even possible. And we talked about Santa Claus. I'm talking with Stephen Hawking, we talked about Santa Claus. But he had a point. The point is that any of us, many of us, if we know how to do the right things, can contact these beings or be in contact with them, and they can come to us. We can call them down from heaven. We can call them from the extra dimensions. We just know how to do the right things to make it happen. Through ritual, prayer, light, all these things. But we are, at this moment in time, moving to that next step of evolution where we want to make an homunculus. It's called the singularity. Okay? The technocrats and those who are into transhumanism want to create the homunculus, a mechanical one. But they want to fuse it with humans. They want to take consciousness and be able to download it into a computer, then re-put it into an avatar, a homunculus. Who taught us this? Could it be the synthetic bots that we have contact with since the 40s? How is it that we've gone 70 years and we're able to do this now within 30 years? Many of you and others could have duplicates of you. You don't have to have a child anymore, you just have a duplicate of you. Do you remember in AI, the movie AI? The little boy. The woman had the little boy. She wanted to have the little boy. It was a little robot boy. You know what she did before she had that boy turn into a boy? She had to activate it with certain words and incantations and voices. She had to say, I can't remember what she said, something like David, David, shark, boy, just giving all these words to activate this thing. Same thing with what they did. They had to say some things, activate it, and do it like that, all in the rudimentary way. So is our next phase of evolution creating atomic homunculi on our own? Or will we be introduced to synthetic life with the mind of God? And where will they get that information? Word has it that they're going to be using huge D-Wave computers at CERN to be able to do this very thing. Be able to take and model intelligence, put it into avatars, and that intelligence, where are they going to gather it from? The wormholes, the gods. So the gods will come through, and they'll be able to be incarnate in these bodies they're going to be making. Let there be light. We bust the particles together, the quark cannon, we're able to bring in these beings, we're able to incarnate them in other bodies. Boom, we have the singularity. But you know what will happen before the technical singularity? We'll have the organic singularity, where the brain, the human brain, will outdo itself, and they're already doing this. They're already putting human counterparts in monkey brains. Planet of the Apes. They're creating chimeras with human body parts. Manimals. Dr. Moreau. Welcome to Human Plus, the atomic alien. And we're going to be making him a cybernetic, human-like creature. Thank you so much.